Hi, this is Greg from Ladmer Technologies. Today I'm going to go through our Asset Easy Wi-Fi Controller. Okay, so digging into the asset here, there are a couple concepts to know about. One, whether it's the client, which would be the controller scene, or the server side, which is your actual game, however it's set up, we want to place an Easy Wi-Fi Manager class, which will have some various things here, like what socket the UDP packets are going to communicate on, whether or not we're the client or the server, whether or not we want to connect automatically, and whether or not we want to see all the network traffic going back, which is this log verbose option. We try to make this as easy as possible for you. If you're starting with a blank scene, most of our objects can be created easily under the Game Object menu here. I could add Easy Wi-Fi Manager, I could add various client controls, whether it's D-pad, joysticks, whatever. Client side, there's various controls you can easily put into your scene and anchor it however you wish with the new Unity GUI. You have D-pads, joystick, buttons, various types of controls. We can see these in the client scene here it creates, when you go to the menu, its own client control canvas with its own panel. But if we go to like D-pad here, there are only a couple of things that you see in the script. We handle, like if I was touching various parts of the D-pad, either with mouse or with touch controls for you. But to keep things simple for you, the main thing that you just need to know about is the control name. You're going to match these strings on the client and server side. Wi-Fi controller will then automatically handle all the passing of data back and forth. All you need to do is make sure that those strings match and you're good to go. The other piece of information here is low threshold, which on a D-pad is essentially a dead area in the middle so that it can perform the way you'd expect. Similarly, buttons perform the same way. The main thing to know here is that you still have the control name, and basically it'll be a common theme throughout to just match the strings, and then the server side object will take the input from this particular control here. Similarly, we do have sample images for the sprites for buttons pressed, D-pad, joysticks, and the various things that you would need in a framework for the UI layout of these buttons. Feel free to use them if you wish. They are intended to be fully featured. There are various assets on the asset store that are quite excellent UI frameworks though, easy touch, finger gestures, various others. But if you're more comfortable with those, you can certainly use those and integrate them instead of using our controls here. It's really your preference. Similarly, server side, I'll open up the server scene here. We just have a simple server scene here with a couple of spheres that you can move or rotate, or the various input movements, but this would normally be where your game is. Let's say you have a character and you want to basically use the virtual joysticks as a controller. Really, whatever your use case is, it's pretty easy to integrate the server side into your existing game. In this example here, I'll show you this red sphere. On it you see a standard D-pad server controller, which is one of our components. You would just get to it here under Easy Wi-Fi Controller Server, and then I would add the particular server-side control to my game object. You'll see a couple of things here. First, here's the matching string, so this is going to behave basically when I hit the D-pad in various directions. I have the player here, so if you had, let's say you have two mobile phones, and the first one's going to be the first player and the second one naturally the second player, which would control different game objects in your scene. I have a way to basically specify which player. In addition, we also have various things on the standard controller here. We'll provide a standard controller for each of the standard movement types, joysticks and D-pads. It's easy on movement types to do common themes. Most of the time we want to move position or rotate an object, or the local versions of that if we're doing it with respect to the player and not to world position. Buttons or various other controls are usually quite custom. You hit a button and maybe you want it to jump or shoot, or other times it might be used as a switch. So on those type of controls, let's go to the blue sphere has it. Basically we give you a way, again the same matching string and what player I want to be. This is arbitrary, by the way. You could, with UDP sockets, as long as you're on the same Wi-Fi network, you can have as many players as you want. We specified it as 16 since I doubt really anybody's going to have more than 16 players, but you can specify this as many as you want with an easy change to an enum encode if you want more. But on the button control here, the only thing you see here is a notify method, which will essentially, let's say you want to jump or shoot, or in this case change color. It's just a custom method that's going to get passed into it. Since this is a button, a Boolean, if this was another control, it would get passed maybe some floats or whatever data you want. But it's just basically specifying a function. In this case, the function does nothing more than change the color of the item. But on these custom controls, what we're providing you is what method you want us to call. On the standard controls that we saw before, we provide easy ways to do the common things that you would want to. So in this case, I went position. The D-pad horizontal will impact the x-axis. The D-pad vertical will move the sphere up and down in this case. In a nutshell, those are the basic components of Easy Wi-Fi Controller, both the client and the server side. We're not hiding anything inside some DLLs that you can't modify. This is completely open source if you buy the asset. If you wanted to figure out how we're doing some of the network communication for you, it's in the Easy Wi-Fi Controller code file here. We're handling all of the over the Wi-Fi network communications, taking your input and sending it to the server, and various other things for you automatically. But if you wish to modify it, you certainly can. And the last thing that I want to do is just give you a simple demo here of Easy Wi-Fi Controller in action.
Okay, for the quick demo now, I have a standard Amazon Fire TV hooked up to my television set, connected to my router via Wi-Fi, and I have a Samsung Galaxy S3 phone here. My router is not next to either device. It's actually through the floor and a couple walls and probably about 50 feet away. And I'm going to give a quick demo here of the latency and how Easy Wi-Fi Controller works. So I've installed on the Amazon Fire TV the server version of our scene that we saw earlier, and on the on the Samsung Galaxy S3, I've installed the client version. So as you can see here, it's our normal server scene on the screen there, and I will launch the client application. As we saw earlier on the Easy Wi-Fi Manager, I've set Connect Automatically. We can certainly have a splash screen if we wanted to not connect automatically, and like the first controller that connects would be player 1 and so on. It's completely up to you how you want to handle it. But in this scene, it's just connected automatically, and if I hit the button here, you can see the button 1 change color on the screen. If I hit this one, the same thing, and I've got my standard control here where I can move the sphere around as we talked about earlier. Now, naturally, it's a little hard to gauge latency here, but I am getting, if I hit the screen like this, basically it's very, very quick. In real-world tests, when I was actually comparing timestamps and that, on average I get about 20 milliseconds. It naturally depends on a lot of things like your Wi-Fi. It also depends on the hardware specs of the machine. Like I have a Fire TV Stick, which is a pretty underpowered device, and it just can't keep up. Well, it can't keep up with things like Netflix or normal apps, but certainly on those devices it won't be as snappy, but it has more to do with device limitations. But assuming you have okay Wi-Fi, and like I said, I'm not exactly right next to my router here, and that this is pretty normal Wi-Fi conditions, you should expect to see pretty good performance.